G'day, it's Tom Hollander from the MongoDB Charts team. And today I'm going to tell you all about embedding using MongoDB Charts. Now, to get us started, I've already built us a couple of charts that show sales data from our fictitious company. This first chart shows the number of sales by month, by purchase method, and this is showing you the number of items from our inventory that have been sold. So I could go and share this dashboard with any member of my team pretty easily. But let's say I have an existing application that my sales team is using. And what I really would like to do is to embed those charts into that application. So let's see how easy it is to do that. So first I'm going to go into my first chart and I'm going to choose Embed Chart. Now you can see here there's a few different options for embedding. We're going to start with unauthenticated, and then I'll go on to show the authenticated options later in this demo. Now, if I'd like to embed this, the easiest thing to do is to just enable unauthenticated access and then choose the iframe option. With iframe, I can literally just copy and paste this code into my application to get a chart. So this is what my application looks like so far. It's not very exciting. But if I go into the code and just paste that blob of code in and save it, and then we go back, you can see here that in about 5 seconds, I have a chart. Now this is live data, it's not a picture. So I get tooltips, I can go and use all the interactive features that are built into the product. And as the data changes, users would automatically see the latest data into my application. So that's a great option, and sometimes that's all you need. But I am going to show you a few of the more powerful options just to give you an understanding of the full range of capabilities that the product offers. So let's go and delete this iframe code. And if we look back at our options here, you can see here we have a second option here, which is the JavaScript SDK. And as its name suggests, that allows developers to have a little bit more flexibility to embed these charts and also to programmatically interact with them. So let's see how we would go about using this particular feature. So in place of the iframe, I'm just going to go and add a div tag. I'm going to call my chart chart1. And I already set up some CSS styles, so I'll just give it a class of chart. And that's all my markup is going to look like. Now let's go into my script file, and I'm just going to write a small amount of code to render my embedded chart. Now, first thing I need to do is to import my charts embed SDK from this one here. Then I'm going to go and initialize my SDK object. And here I just need to specify the base URL. Now the base URL is some of the information that you might have noticed in that dialog previously. So this basically just refers to the URL of my particular charts project. So I'm going to go and copy that URL, and then I'm going to go and paste it into my SDK object. Next, I'm going to go and get my chart. So const chart1 equals SDK.create chart. And here, all I need to know is the chart ID. And this also comes from this dialog here as well. So I'll just copy the chart ID and I will go and paste it into here. And finally, I'm going to say chart1.render, and I want to render it into my div. So document.get element by ID chart1. So let's go back to our application here, and let's see. And it is now looking basically the same as it was before, but rather than embed using the iframe, we have decided to embed with the SDK, and that's all looking pretty nice. So, but that's pretty much the same as it was before. So let's go and see if we can actually teach us some new tricks and make it do something new. And this data has a big range, so you can all the way from 2013 through to the end of 2017. And maybe that's what I want, but it might be a little bit more helpful if I could go and choose to see just a subset of that data. So what I'm going to do now is go back to my markup, and just to save some of my painful typing, I'm just going to go and paste this year select. So you can see that it allows me to choose which year I want. So here we go. I have my select, but it's not doing anything yet because I've not wired that particular code up. So let's see what it would look like to actually wire that code into my application as well. So I'm going to go, and after all this, I'll just explain this code. It's not as scary as it looks. So I'm just finding my select option. I'm adding an event handler. If the value is empty, that's the first item, then I want you to filter the chart to show all information, all documents. Otherwise, I'm basically finding out what year was selected. The end of the year is going to be 1 year after that. And then I'm setting a filter, so the sales date must be after the first of the start year and before the first of the next year. And that's all that code looks like. So let's go and see what this looks like now. Just make sure that's refreshed. And let me save my code. It's probably even more important. And now when I select the year, I was doing a filter, and it is showing me every year as I filter it, or I could go back and filter to show all years. Now, one thing I will point out too, I did set this up previously. If I go back to my charts embed dialog, I actually had to specify that the sale date was a field that I was allowed to filter on. Now, by default, you can't filter on any fields, and for security reasons, we want to make sure that the chart author is in full control over which fields can be used for filtering. So do make sure that you remember to use the user-specified filters, and then you can add whichever particular fields you would like people to be able to filter with interactively. So that's great. We've now got a slightly fancier application that lets us do filtering by year. Let's go one step further. Now let's go and embed that second chart into our application. So we should know how to do that because it's much the same as the first one. So we'll just go and add a second div for our second chart. We'll call that one chart 2. Then we'll go and copy these 2 lines of code and call that one chart 2. Call that one chart 2, and call that one chart 2. And of course, we're going to have the new ID as well. So let's just go over to this second chart and grab the ID from this particular chart and paste this one into the dialog as well, into the code, I'm sorry. And when I save that and we look at our application, you can see here we're now getting these 2 charts, just as we would expect. The filtering is only set to apply to the first chart. So now we've got this dynamic chart here. We've also got this second chart, but it's completely static. Now, what we would like to do is to have some interactivity where after I choose an element on the first chart, we want to be able to filter the second chart. And that is now possible to do with something we call click events. So let's go back into our code and see how we might set that up. So after we render our first chart, we're going to go and add a then block because we want this code to execute after the chart renders. And then we're going to do a little lambda expression, and we're just going to say chart1.add event listener. We want to add the event called click, and we'll call it click handler. So what this is saying is that basically we want this click handler code to run every time someone clicks on that first chart. So now we've got to define what click handler is. So just go and build a function click handler. It takes a payload object. And now we're going to say simply chart2.setFilter. So we want to filter based on whatever was clicked on the first chart. And that's actually really easy to do because we have something called the selection filter. So selection filter is basically a MongoDB filter document that refers to whatever was clicked in the first chart. So let's go and see what this is looking like now. So it's just getting filtered by 2013. Now let me click on maybe this little bar here. And what it's doing, you can see here that this second chart filtered. And so now you can see that in that period, there were 13 notepads and 9 binders sold. If I go and choose maybe a larger element here, you can see here there were 63 notepads and 53 pens. So you can see here that I've now, with basically just a very small number of lines of code, I've created this interactive experience where clicking on one chart is resulting in a filter for the second chart. There's a lot more you can do with click events, but hopefully that gives you a good taste. Now, one final thing I want to show you is authenticated embedding. So right now, these charts could be viewed by anybody that knows really those 2 pieces of information, the base URL and the chart ID. And while those are unlikely to be guessed, for sensitive data, you probably want a higher degree of security associated with that. So luckily, this portal actually already has a login experience here. So we are able to log in, and this will verify the user's credentials and emit a JavaScript web token. What we'd like to do is use that token to make sure that people can only view the charts if they are an authenticated user. So let's see how we're going to go and do that. So in this case, all we really have to do is turn off the unauthenticated embedding, and we'll turn on the authenticated. In this case, it was already on. So we'll do the same for this chart here. So we'll turn off unauthenticated and make sure the authenticated embedding is turned on as well. The next thing we have to do is tell Charts how it will be verifying those user tokens. And to do that, we have to go into chart settings, and we have to add an authentication provider. So here I'm going to say it will be a sales portal token. We have to say what kind of token. Is it a Realm token or a Google token or just a plain JSON web token? So I happen to know, because of the way authentication code was set up, that this is going to be an HS256 algorithm, and the tokens are signed with the signing key top secret. So let me go and do that. And so now we've basically configured our charts that they can only render if they have an authenticated session. So we haven't authenticated the session yet, so it's not doing anything. So let's now go back to our login page, and now let's log in. And it's still not going to work. And the only reason there is we haven't told the charts how to get access to that particular token. So to do that is only really one extra line of code. So in my login code, after the token is generated, it's being saved to the local session. So what I want to do here is say get user token, and this is a function which returns a token to charts. So I'm going to say session storage dot get item, and it's going to be called bearer token. So basically, every time the chart is rendered, it will retrieve the token from session storage, send it to charts. Charts is then going to use that signing key to verify if the token is indeed valid. And if and only if that token is valid, we get our charts. And you can see it's actually already worked here. So the token is valid. If I were to go and clear the tokens using my quick and dirty approach here, and then try refreshing, you'll see that we won't get anything rendering. And then if I log in again, I'll get my charts back. So that's all looking good. Now, final thing I want to show you. Currently, these charts are now secure, so it's impossible to view the charts without a valid user token. However, everybody who has a valid user token is actually going to see the same information. And sometimes that's fine, but sometimes there might be a bit of sensitivity in that particular information. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a new feature to this application, so users can only see the sales data for their location which they work in. So if I look at this particular bearer token here and I paste it into this tool, jwt.io, you can see what's inside the token. So this is the token, but basically it's got an algorithm. I've got a username, I've got the issue date and expiry date. You can see we've also specified that this particular user's home office is Seattle. So they should only see information related to the Seattle store. To configure that, I can go back into my charts. Let's go into embed chart, go into authenticated access, which is already switched on. And I can use this last feature here, this new feature called inject filter per user. Now, this is a little JavaScript function that basically will apply an additional filter beyond any filters that are already on the charts. So when it's turned on, this was just something I already typed in previously. But basically what I'm doing is I'm saying the query that we're going to add, the filter we're going to add is to set the store location to the value of the home office field from that particular token. So let's go and save that and just make sure it works. So we can see here that in January 2013, for example, across all stores, it was at about $56,000 or something like that. If I go over to my session here, let me just go and re-render my charts and see what it's doing. I can see here that in that same month, I'm now only seeing about $15,000 worth. And the reason is that this chart has now got this additional filter that was specific to that user's token. If a different user with a different token were to sign in, they would see the chart filtered differently based on their home office. So that's a great way of making sure that not only the charts secure from people who are unauthenticated, but even authenticated users see data that is personalized for them. So I hoped you enjoyed this demo. It gave you a taste of the set of capabilities that MongoDB Charts has to offer around embedding. If you haven't used Charts and you'd like to give it a go, you can simply go to cloud.mongodb.com, deploy a free Atlas cluster, and activate Charts. And if you've already used Charts, I encourage you to give embedding a try. Okay, thanks and happy charting.